Welcome everybody, thank you for coming. This is the Lake Bluff School District 65 Board of Education Truth and Taxation hearing for December 10th, 2013. Christine, could you please do a roll call?
Mark Berry.
Present.
John Morozen.
Present.
Leanne Charlotte.
Present.
Julie Gottschall.
Present.
Richard Haig.
Present.
Susan Ryder is not present.
Thanks. So we have 6 and a quorum. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to allow individuals the opportunity to be heard and comment on the proposed 2013 tax levy. We're going to do a brief 15-minute opportunity, and then we start our regular meeting at 7 o'clock, so be patient. And start off with Jane Lair, our business officer, is going to talk a little bit about the proposed levy.
All right, as you know, the board has discussed and deliberated the 2013 tax levy. At its regular meeting in November, the board did adopt a resolution for estimated taxes to be levied for 2013. After that, we have done all of our truth and taxation requirements, including publishing what we call the black box on the paper. And I have not been contacted to date by any member of the public with questions on the tax levy or requests to appear at the hearing this evening. The board will be approving the tax levy during the regular meeting immediately following the hearing tonight, and we'll file it by the end of December of this year.
And at the time we approve it, we'll have plenty of time to discuss it as well. At this time, I'd like to open up the floor. If there's comments from anybody who'd like to address the board, to please step to the podium and state your name and address, and let yourself be heard. And if and if nobody'd like to address the board, we can move on. But be patient. We are required. We can't start the next portion of our meeting till 7 o'clock.
So the kids can come.
Can the kids come sing
Yeah.
before we adjourn this?
No, they
meeting?
can't. It'll take 7 minutes to get them lined up.
So we're going to adjourn the truth and taxation
Nope. Adjourn it
after they
after
sing?
they get up.
Okay, so we're going to make a slight modification and bring the kids up and.
That's what I do. Oh, then go as usual.
We'll be here at regular 7.
Okay, then we will adjourn.
Yeah.
All right. May I have a motion to adjourn this truth and taxation hearing at 6:52?
So then.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. The meeting's adjourned. We will resume again at about 7. Thanks for your patience, everybody.
Did that nicely.
then we can let you guys perform. Give me 30 seconds. Okay, welcome to the Lake Bluff School District 65 Board of Education regular meeting for December 10th, 2013. Christine, can we please have a roll call?
Mark Berry,
Present.
John Morosen, Leanne Charlo,
Present.
Julie Gottschall,
Present.
Richard Haig,
Present.
Susan Ryder is not here.
Okay, so we do have a quorum and we can begin, and we're going to start off with a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That was well done. And then we have a presentation from the middle school encore singers. And here's Nate Blackmore to introduce that.
Good evening, everyone. It's our pleasure to bring some of our performers here this evening. A little known fact about this room is that it has really great acoustics, and you're going to see what I mean here in just a minute. So thank you very much for being here. I'm going to turn things over to Miss C, who has just a short introduction, and then we'll get to hear from our middle school choral students. Miss C.
Put it on board meeting, the playlist.
Thank you very much. Good evening. I'd like to thank the school board and administration for having inviting Encore to perform today. We're very excited to be here. This will be our 5th performance today. We spent the morning at Westmoreland and the Wheelshire, the Ponds, the VA Hospital, and the Lake Bluff Public Library. And I'm sure that these kids had a great time performing for a variety of people today. I know I was extremely proud to have them be part of an ensemble that I was the director of. They handled themselves with maturity and grace beyond their years. So I'd like to just give them a special hand before we start because they were fantastic. The Fine Arts program at the middle school is probably one of the highlights for most of the students that you see here, but this is just a sampling of the students that are involved in fine arts. There are 209 students in the chorus program, there are 134 students in the band program, and there are 92 of those students that perform in both band and chorus. 251 of the 310 students at our middle school perform in band and chorus. So we're very pleased and happy about that. And then without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Encore, which is a group of auditioned 7th and 8th graders, and they rehearse before school twice a week. So here is Encore. Thank you.
All the
Thank you, Encore Singers. Thank you. Nobody's sticking around to hear the rest of this?
Thank you, everybody, for having us. Thank you.
Good job.
David, well,
Yes, thank you.
great job.
Yes, thank you. Well, yes. He's an event too now.
Well, thanks for all your work and all that.
They were great. That was beautiful.
But we appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Great. Thank you.
Nobody wants to stick around and talk taxes?
Okay. I was really excited.
Yeah, there's some stuff in there for Julie to sign too, because you were the secretary at one time. And there's actually one spot John's got to sign, so we got to pass it
So
over.
certificate of tax lien, it's 2 days.
Right.
It says specifically it's Julie. There's a couple that say Julie.
I know. But I couldn't understand why this way I couldn't make his noise. Just yeah. It was hard for me.
So we're only left with our diehards. Just the diehards.
Usual suspects.
So that was our wonderful presentation by the Encore Singers. And now on item 6, we're going to open it up one more time if anybody would like to address the board. We welcome comments from staff, parents, and members of the community. So if anybody would like to address the board, please don't hesitate. If not, we'll move on to item 7, which is our reports, and begin with our PTO report, which is Kate Amaral is going to handle as a substitute, I suppose.
I'll be playing the role of Ann Stewart tonight.
Okay.
So the PTO report for December. We had an LBMS PTO holiday boutique. It was a great success, raising over $2,000 for the LBMS PTO, and that was hosted at Jerry Garrity's house. It was a wonderful evening. We've also had a new project that we've spearheaded, Birdhouse Libraries. If you're familiar with those, they have sprung up in DC and in Madison. We have gotten approval with the Lake Bluff Park District to put one in each park.
Are those the little? They're really small. Like just. I
Yeah.
saw something on the news about that recently. They're kind of all over the world, actually.
They've really taken off. So they're little, they kind of look like birdhouses, and you take a book, you leave a book,
Yeah.
you bring a book back. And we were hoping that this would encourage, reading amongst our district students and the community. The first one is going to go in the old East School lot. We were hoping to get that up before the ground froze, but we just missed it. So we'll see if we can get that up before spring, which then we'll start populating the parks with them in spring. We even have one that's designed as a gazebo that we're hoping to put on the east side of town. Recently we had Matt Bellis come and present. He presented to the parents at the high school, and then he also presented at Deer Path and LBMS. I imagine Nate will talk a bit about that. I was able to attend the parent meeting. Very useful, very helpful, talking about making good choices and finding natural highs. The PTO helped support his presence in the community. On November 19th, at the elementary school, we had a place called Illinois for our third graders, and that's the Lake Forest County Preserves. On November 25th, we had our first grade time travelers, where they sort of lived a day in the life of the Wampanoags, and that went very well. November 26th, we sponsored Birds of Prey, also a Lake County Preserves program. And then on December 4th and 5th, we held a book fair at LBMS that coincided with the choral and band concerts. The PTO is also exploring using the Lake Forest bookstore as a source for our book fairs. There's a lot of logistics to work through with that, but we would like to be able to support our local bookstore, and then we also get a larger variety of books to the kids than Scholastic can offer. Some upcoming dates to remind you of: on January 21st at LBMS, we have Rosalind Wiseman coming. Then we have our science nights at LBES on January 27th. LBMS is February 12th, and our spring fundraiser is March 1st at the Lake Forest Club. Another thing I wanted to update you on was something from the Community Wellness Task Force. They have created an anonymous text-to-tip hotline. It's the first time it's ever been used as a suicide prevention, emotional wellness aspect. It's actually taken from a crime text hotline. That was the original format. They're using it now as an anonymous text line that's being monitored 24/7 by local clinical social workers. Heather Hale's group is the one monitoring that. They're going to do a 90-day trial, see how much usage they have, and see how it goes. With the help of the districts and other community sources like the PTO, they are funded for the first year, and then they'll see sort of how much the cost is for these social workers to man it and how much it's used. But it's really an innovative and great idea for all people.
Is that going to be publicized?
Yes. It's going to have a huge media launch. I know they were initially hoping to launch it early November, but there's been some hiccups.
Yeah.
So it should launch hopefully soon, and they're even hoping to have the QR codes in merchant windows and at the schools. And then I spoke briefly to our president, Kathy O'Hara, blanking there for a minute, about having it in the Tri-District newsletter that I think is to go out in January, and just we're going to splash it everywhere.
Yeah. I think there was an article in the Trib on just that.
Oh, really?
Not too long ago. Like if you needed to publicize it somehow and reference an article and talk, it was a very positive article about how kids are, given this day and age when there's not a lot of face-to-face communication sometimes between kids, but they're a lot more likely to text
Yes.
when they're in trouble or when somebody they know is in trouble than they are to go face-to-face and ask for help or get a call. So it's a good idea.
It's anonymous. If the texting opens up to where they're willing to give contact information and willing to be contacted, then they can take steps to do that. But initially, it will just be
It's a good idea.
anonymous, saying, I need help. I know somebody that needs help. But yeah, hopefully it'll be a useful tool. And then just as a shameless, oh sorry.
I was just going to ask a question on that. Someone's going to notify us at schools, or do our social workers, are they already aware of that?
About the text to text?
Yeah.
Carly Quick was in the meeting, so she's aware of it, and
Okay.
they're definitely going to work through the schools to spread the word to the students and the staff.
Okay.
But yes.
Great. And then the shameless plug.
Yes, my shameless plug. After watching the Encore percent, I swear I get teary-eyed every time I watch them. But my sons were involved in the choral and band concerts this week, and one of them came home and he was on a natural high, and he said, "I can't believe how lucky I am to go to a school where I get to do so many great things." So, yay to our fine
That's
arts
pretty
club.
exciting.
That's not so shameless.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Then item 7B would be the LBES interim principal report by not Dr. Barb West.
I will be playing with Dr. West tonight. Hi, good evening.
Well, LBS is always a busy place. Just today, our fifth graders traveled to the VA hospital in North Chicago, and they performed holiday songs for the veterans there. Our fourth and fifth graders this week will be participating in Hour of Code, which is a program where students learn computer coding, and it's just very basic apps, little games that they play on the computer that teaches them how to code for computers. This Thursday, our fourth and fifth graders will travel to Oak Terrace and Clearview schools for our Read With Me program, and this is in partnership with Lake County Cares. And just a bit of advertising for us. Our first grade fine arts show is next Thursday at 6:30 p.m. if anybody's interested in coming to watch. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. Next, item C would be our middle school report, and Nate Blackbird will do that.
Hi there. I'll keep my remarks brief. We had a wonderful performance, and thanks to all of our middle school students, our encore students who were here to perform tonight. I thought they sounded awesome. Couple of things. That was just a sample of what occurred last week on December 3rd was our full chorus concert where the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade chorus was performed, as well as the encore group you saw this evening. The following night was the band concert. I think it's important to mention that 80%, just over 80% of our kids participate in band or chorus or both, and that is a very high percentage for middle school. It's something we're very proud of. Also, we're very proud of those students who performed during the gazebo lighting that occurred last Saturday. They braved the very cold temperatures and really helped to warm up that event, so it was great to be able to be a part of that. I wanted to thank the PTO for helping to bring Dr. Matt Ballas to our middle school to present to the students last Friday. He's the author of Natural Highs, as Kate had already mentioned. Also, quite the comedian, and there was a lot of laughter, but a lot of great ideas and great information shared, and just another great assembly for our students, and PTO helped make that possible, so thank you. And Alliance as well. No, pardon me, PTO did, pardon me, I'm confusing the Rosalind Wiseman presentation, which is also coming up. We also had, the week of December 2nd, the department chairs who came from Lake Forest High School to present to parents at Lake Bluff Middle School, just to give parents a taste of some of what is to look forward to at Lake Forest High School and some of the classes that their 8th graders will be participating in next year. Wanted to make sure to mention the Shields Township canned food drive. Our students did an outstanding job bringing in non-perishable food items. I believe it was 3 carfuls that were carried away just before Thanksgiving, and so really outstanding for our students to be able to be a part of that. And also wanted to mention that we're doing the Hour of Code and recognizing the Hour of Code week at Lake Bluff Middle School as well. We have a Wacky Wednesday group who are working with Lori Brown, beginning to learn all the different components to computer code and programming. I got a little into it myself and started playing around and quickly became hooked. Most of our students surpassed my skill level in a short period of time, but I did host a group at recess for each of the 6th, 7th, and 8th grades today, and had a great time learning to do some computer coding with our students. So that was lots of fun. We're going to try it again with the whole school on Friday and test the bandwidth a little bit and see how that goes. It's a great way to stretch our wings in terms of bandwidth in the middle school. So we'll try that out. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nate.
Yep.
Moving right along, item 7D, President's Report. This is very brief. Just want to start by reiterating call for communication in the district, as I always do, that if anybody would like to correspond or communicate with the district staff or board, please reach out to us. Our contact information is online, and we would love to hear from you. Some of that I was going to follow up with some thank yous and some shout outs, but most of those have already been covered. But a great job to all the students and staff who helped at the Christmas tree lighting at the gazebo this past weekend. And also big thanks to Mr. Beasy and Miss C for their holiday band and choir concert that went off pretty well at the middle school. So thanks to all that and everybody who participated in those and all the hard work. I just wanted to end with just a really brief summary. 2 weeks ago, the weekend prior, 3 weeks ago, the weekend prior to Thanksgiving, whenever that was, we attended a few of us attended the III conference in downtown Chicago, which is the IASBO, and the IAS Day. There's like 10,000 board members and staff and administrators from all over Illinois meet for a series of conferences. John and I went, and Jean and Jane was there, and Kevin was there. It was pretty impressive. I took a handful of finance classes, one with John. I attended a president's roundtable. That was really probably the best thing I took, which was just a room full of board presidents kind of sharing all the things they go through. There was dozens, if not maybe 100 different topics you could take in classes and seminars. But probably the most valuable thing is the kind of the chance encounters and the side conversations and the opportunities to meet and greet other people in our business. I thought it was really valuable. I encourage anybody else to go in the future. I thought one of the big takeaways I had from the meeting was kind of the theme of two of the big keynote speakers they had, and it had to do with the changing educational times we're in. And they made a couple really interesting points. I'm very oversimplifying, but one of the things they said was, the current educational system we are in or evolving from was one based and developed in a industrial age when outcomes for students were very predictable and where they were headed was very predictable. And the future is one that is very unknown, but need to prepare our kids for a digital age. And they cited an example where they said that today they have a mobile app industry, the apps used on your phones. There's 700,000 people employed in that industry today, and in 2007 there were 0. And nobody knew ahead of time, a couple years before that industry was going to be there. So I just thought it was really interesting that we're at a precipice where we need to prepare our kids for a future which we really don't know what the jobs of the future are going to be. And so I thought that was a very interesting takeaway, and it was kind of a theme that permeated the whole weekend there for me. So, and that's the President's report. So now we move on to the Superintendent's report.
My report will also be short. Just looking back in the past few days, looking at the Lake Bluff gazebo lighting, I just needed to share how lucky I feel to be part of this community. It's so neat when the kids are singing and the lights flip on, and even though it was freezing outside, and it was freezing outside, kids did such a fantastic job, and it's just such a beautiful community. Yesterday, our administrative team, along with one of the Lake Forest administrators, spent the entire day interviewing principal candidates for LBES. I'm excited to share that the candidates were all outstanding. We are going to be able to bring 3 candidates forward for interviews at the building with a small group of staff and students in January. All of us felt pretty energized in the room yesterday with all the different candidates, and I'm just very encouraged. I'm glad we started the process early this year because we have definitely the top-notch candidates. Today we spent the morning with the people from the company that hosts our software program for teacher evaluation, and it's always great to get the teacher evaluation committees together because there's a lot of honesty in the room, and there's a lot of feedback on improving teaching and learning, and it becomes a very, very professional and interesting dialogue. So we did that this morning. I also wanted to thank the Lake Forest School Boards for hosting a school board get-together last week. It was very well attended, and it was nice to really get to know other people in our learning community. And I feel strongly that that partnership will continue to flourish and grow, and that's what's best for our kids in the community. So I'm very excited about that. And Mike Semick is very gracious and very easy to work with, and I really enjoyed getting to know his board members. With that, I am going to turn it over to Jane just briefly to talk about our bond rating. I did share that with our board, but I wanted her to share a little bit tonight so that everybody could hear what happened with our bond rating.
Thank you. We did have our interview with Moody's on November 18th. It included myself, Liz Hennessy, and a representative from Moody's. And we are disappointed that we didn't get upgraded. However, Moody's is not in the mood, I will say, to really do any improving. He recognized that our financial situation is excellent. He recognized that our decline in EAV is the same as the greater Chicagoland area, and that ours that decline is slowing, and we're kind of anticipating bottoming out and moving up. But they also really put a lot of emphasis on the state of Illinois and its economic crisis, even though we pointed out we're not really dependent upon the state for funding. We're not really a property tax rich district. They still, that weighs a lot with Moody's at the moment, and they were just not ready to move. So we're happy to have the AA2, and it is a good rating, but we certainly were hoping for a little bit of improvement.
And if you asked them the question, what numbers would they have needed to see to give us a higher rating, what would the answer have been?
I don't know that there would have been anything, John. I think because Liz and I...
What's the point of rating us if they're going to judge us on?
Things are out of our control, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think that in having done that exercise a couple times for the village, there is two elements. There is the soundness of the tax base, the situation, the financial situation of the entity, and also evidence of managing expenses and tracking of cost and monitoring of cost. So, for whatever it's worth.
But they would have given us they gave us excellent points, excellent ratings on our history, our fund balances, our management. Those were all he recognizes good, wonderful things. They still put emphasis on the state of Illinois. They mentioned the pension crisis,
Which was the day before pension reform passed.
basically.
Also.
Yes. So even though, again, trying to point out to them that should we have to pay some of the pension costs, we certainly felt very comfortable we could absorb those costs within our finances, but they put a lot of weight on that.
But our bond rating is very strong.
It is very good. It is very good.
How does it compare with other districts along the North Shore?
I don't know what the other district's ratings are. We could look it up very easily.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jane.
Thank you.
And then
One thing I want to mention, I did pass out today, we did go to market with the bonds today. So this document you have, if you remember, was option 2 was that we selected. This is the final numbers. So if you would just take a note at the total net savings, that number is just about 81,000, just under 82,000 more than what the projections were in option 2.
Actually, we announced to the public $2 million, and we're going to end up with about 2.4.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, almost 2.5.
So that's very good.
It's very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jane. Next, item 7F, we're going to move on to Kevin Rubenstein and the professional development report.
Talk with you this evening about professional development in the district. So hopefully, fantastic. So just a little bit of an overview of the presentation. you some results of the professional development survey and then also talk with you about our future plans. So back when we set the vision for the district, we talked about excellence in education, enthusiasm for life with every student every day. And underlying that statement are some beliefs. The first belief is that we are continuously improving, that we are a strong student-centered environment, and that's what we're creating. And also a belief that outstanding teaching creates outstanding learning. And there is quite a bit of research that's been done about the relationship between teacher quality and student learning. And it is the factor that is driving student improvement across the country when we look at improvements in student achievement. So I just have some quotes from some of the big experts up there. Over the summer, we got the preliminary results from the Illinois 5 Essentials survey. And the 5 Essentials survey was distributed in February and March of this school year. We had teachers and students at the middle school take the survey. And then teachers from the elementary school take the survey as well. And so we got preliminary results back in the summer. As you know from talking with Dr. Sophie, the state of Illinois released the results and then took them back because the norms that were used when the 5 Essentials was originally established, it was driven by the University of Chicago. They did about 20 years of research in the Chicago public schools about what was different between the schools that were succeeding and moving up versus the schools that were not doing so well. And so that was their norm group. And many schools across the state didn't really feel like that was a fair normative group to compare us to. And so the state this year is renorming that survey. But some of the raw feedback that we got from that is that teachers felt as though professional development is not sustained or coherently focused. So that's the first part. That after professional development activities, there's not enough time, and in some cases, there's not enough support to implement the changes, the new learning that's gone on. Professional development did not offer opportunities to work collaboratively with their colleagues, either within their building or across the district. And that's something that, in the short time that I've been here, has been sort of a novel concept to me. Every time I've brought together a group of middle school and elementary school teachers into the same room, it is a new exploration. I discovered that they have not always had these conversations, and so it's nice to be able to bring them into the same room. So recognizing this feedback from the summer of 2013, we designed a professional development survey and administered it online using SurveyMonkey, and you have a copy of the survey in your packet this evening. We had about 83 staff members respond out of 110 possible, which was a good response rate. And the first couple of questions on there were really to help us establish a baseline. As you know, in the strategic plan, we're really looking to focus some more on professional development. And so we needed to have some baseline data about how people perceive professional development in the district, more so than just the raw data from the state of Illinois. So approximately 40% of those surveyed indicated that professional development had helped them to improve student learning. So we'd like to increase that number. Approximately 30% of the staff members who responded indicated that professional development had met their needs. 47% of those surveyed indicated that professional development had improved their practice, their professional practice. And so professional development in District 65, the key takeaway for me there was that we need to look at ways to, first of all, make it far more sustained than it is, so that they're not drive-by professional development opportunities anymore, that there is sustained and ongoing conversations after a professional development topic has occurred, and that there is the administrative and coaching support in the building so that people, after they've heard a presentation and heard and learned about some new great ideas, there are other people around them who can help to support it. So We asked our teachers how prepared do they feel to meet the needs of students, and broke them down into several different categories. And so the lowest area there for us was 27% of our students, or 27% of our teachers felt that they were prepared, highly prepared or prepared to meet the needs of students with English language learning needs. And it goes down from there. It goes up from there. Those are all of the groups that are reported up there, but certainly we would like to see, even though the number of students on the autism spectrum is a relatively small number within the district, we would still like that number to be higher. We need to build the capacity within our district. Even though we have a relatively small population of English language learners in the district, we would certainly like to see that number of teachers who are comfortable with having an English language learning student in their classroom and feel well prepared to increase. And so that's some of that will be part of the focus as we move forward. We asked them about topics that they felt should be addressed. Not surprising, a majority of the people who responded, and here they didn't just have to pick one topic, they could choose a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 6 topics that could be addressed. And I only put up there the topics that garnered over 20% of the sort of tally. So not surprising, the top 3, aligning our work to the Common Core, big thing. Behavior intervention strategies, and that's certainly something that we're working on district-wide. And then differentiation strategies, and that's something that Dr. Sophie and I have already had some preliminary conversations about how we could work to focus some of our professional development for the future around differentiation. And then you sort of see that it falls into some of those individual groups, teaching ELL students, teaching students with disabilities. So really, how can we help our teachers to better understand how to work with students with disabilities and all of these different subgroups in their classrooms? And I would venture a guess, though this has not been done in other districts, that this list is not atypical among other districts in the area. Everybody that I talk to at the III conference, as I talk with my colleagues in the field, everybody is working night and day to align their work to the Common Core. And I was thinking about that actually as I was driving over here, that it is mind-boggling how much time and energy we are spending right now working to realign to the Common Core. And so there are districts all across the country who are working just as hard as we are. So really some potential staff development topics that we have there. So key takeaways for you. Staff do not always feel prepared to meet the needs of students who are outside the realm of the typical learner. So you just listed some subgroups up there. But then staff understand that their work needs to be focused on improving instruction for all students and really aligning work with the Common Core, supporting learners whose needs are a little bit different, and then engaging learners in an emotionally safe instructional environment where positive risk-taking is encouraged. And one of our math consultants who we work with, Janice Heigl, was talking with our staff a couple weeks ago about helping to support kids. She made the metaphor of our kids sort of swimming in a pool, that helping kids to be able to swim in the deep end and to really do well, and that it is easy to swim when you are in the shallow end. It's easy to play when you're in the shallow end. When you are in the deep end, it's a little bit more challenging. And so our teachers are really working hard right now to make sure that our students are supported socially and emotionally while they're still being encouraged to take those positive learning risks in the classroom. So maybe getting a question wrong here and there, but still really working through and thinking through that problem. So just some future plans. Dr. Sophie and I are proposing that we create some sort of a professional development planning council beginning in January or February to review the data from the survey to plan a focused professional development program that utilizes our time during staff meetings, early release days, and professional development days much more coherently. It's something that we've talked with some of the administrative team about already, but one of the research articles that I read discussed the fact that it can take upwards of 90 hours for an initiative to really be sustained. When you introduce it to a teacher, you have to use every bit of staff meeting time and early release time and every bit of professional development time that you have focusing on a really specific topic in order to see the outcomes in student learning and student achievement. So we need to focus that broadly, and that's why we talked about the possibility of looking at differentiation. It brings a lot with it in terms of behavior intervention strategies and helping all students to learn and aligning our work to the Common Core. We've got several highly qualified and very talented presenters and trainers right within the district, but we also need to sort of look around and figure out who else we might be calling on. And then that Professional Development Planning Council would serve as the planning group for professional development going forward. They would constantly be meeting, constantly be helping to rework our professional development plan so that it is meeting the needs of teachers and so that we can see some of our baseline numbers go up. We also want to identify methods for sustained professional development programming, including ongoing coaching support, and I'm going to pull something up in just a second because there's a lot going on in the world around us, and we can't think of professional development as in the ways that we have typically thought of professional development. We can't think of it always as a presenter coming in. I really firmly believe that our teacher evaluation system is a professional development system. It's focused on professional growth and helping our teachers to remember that. I really believe that every time we have a conversation about a student and we discuss learning strategies, that's a form of professional development. But there's a lot more out there. And then our plan would be that we would administer the same survey in the fall of next year. So I will just say, Dr. Sophie and the rest of the board members have heard me say this before, but any time of the day or night that you log into Twitter, you are going to get, you're going to get quite a bit of information that is really just thrown at you. And so we need to figure out a way to make sure that we leverage the learning that is going on in Twitter. And so I see that Nate is tweeting from our board meeting here this evening. So, but I have found that Twitter is a fantastic way to connect with other people who I would not have connected with in the past, from soap stars to other authors in the area and across the country that you would never have been able to know. I'm working on my dissertation right now. The author of the book that I'm basing my work on is on Twitter. I started to follow him. It has been a way that I've been able to connect with the author firsthand, who will respond to my tweets and respond to my texts. That's the kind of professional development on the spot that we need to help our teachers to really work towards and engage in. You'll see in some other districts, they have their own hashtag, and so they have it's easily searchable, and so maybe that's something that we want to look at for the district as well, to help teachers to really have that sustained and ongoing support that they need in our district. So,
Kevin, do you mean using Twitter like as a surrogate for coaching?
Not as a surrogate for coaching. I would say
In addition
using Twitter as another way to help teachers to connect with each other and with experts in the field so that we can improve teaching and learning. So I just pulled up the hashtag for my past district, and so 100 ways to let kids know you care. And it is a nice little link there. How to accentuate the positive in your classroom. Just saw a great segment on the Hour of Code, those sorts of things. that Nate was talking about a little bit earlier. We need to really figure out a way to leverage this sort of professional development that is on the spot, ongoing, and allows our teachers to connect with the experts, both inside and outside of the district.
It sounds a lot like what we need to do for our kids too. There's a
Absolutely.
lot of parallels here.
Yes.
Our kids are going to be communicating this way, so we need to be communicating this way also. One of the ways. This is just one of the many ways.
There was, I don't know, you're probably ahead of me on this, Kevin, but NSSED at our last meeting did a presentation on a professional development model they're implementing in-house that involves a lot of coaching. And they talked a lot about the research behind using coaches in professional development and how when you do traditional professional development, it's something you lecture, learn, and you're off on your own.
Correct.
And
Drive-by.
it's
We
so
call it
much-
drive-by.
Apparently it's so much more effective when you have some type of coaching involved where there's follow-up and repeat.
There have been a number of, you are absolutely correct, there have been a number of recent articles in the New York Times and in several other journals across the country about the importance of having coaches even at the highest levels. So you will find top-level CEOs who have an executive learning coach to help them to understand how to become a better CEO. And it's oftentimes tweaking the little things that are going to help our teachers and our professionals in the district to become just a little bit better.
Questions?
One of the things that I was wondering, looking at the statistics of, what they feel they're getting out of the professional development, is how much time we're obligated to spend covering things that people may not find very rewarding or satisfying, like
So like
HR
the
stuff,
state
and
mandates, that sort of
state,
thing.
yeah.
Well, there are a number of state mandates that we have to, that we get to do every single year. And so, our teachers and everybody on staff right now is working through bloodborne pathogens training and DCFS mandated reporter training. There are certain things that we have to do. I think that we need to find ways to do that expediently. We use an online system.
Less
and so-
painfully.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
webinar,
that it's
that's
not-
for webinar.
Exactly. And
Where you can do it on your own time.
and use our time together
Or at your own pace, please.
to really provide some great discussions and ongoing learning. Every time I've had a discussion with an individual teacher in this district or a group of teachers about data or about students or about learning, it has been one of the richest conversations ever that you will have. When you talk with our teachers about why isn't the student learning at their highest level? They know. They will be able to help you out with understanding exactly. They might not know the supports that they need to put into place, but they know about how students learn, and so that's something that's really exciting.
Kevin, I know that there's a big human cry for training on gifted programs
Yes.
and things. We attended that session together, so
Yes.
I know you've heard that and know that as well.
Yes.
But that's something that as we focus on, I know we saw the statistics that people want teaching ELL students and disabilities and things like that. I don't know that it mentioned up here. I guess differentiation strategies may cover gifted, but certainly that's something that I know is a big focus in the district.
And I will say this, I would be highly surprised if, when we get the study back from Northwestern in January, if their big recommendation to us was that we focus only on gifted and enrichment programming, and in terms of a pull-out model. I think that one of the things that they will be talking with us about is how we provide a full continuum of services for students who need gifted and enrichment programming, both within the classroom, and that's really looking at the differentiation strategies, and then to some extent outside the classroom. When you look at best practice and research-based instruction, it is not any longer focused on whole group instruction. It is focused on starting maybe in a whole group and then breaking up into small groups. And there's a great possibility for lots of differentiation that is leveled right at the needs of each individual learner in the classroom there. So I think that some of that will come out of it. But you're absolutely right.
I think when you look, because every parent, staff has shared this, when it says prepared or highly prepared to meet the needs of students who, when they say need enrichment, we've got 54% of staff that would really like some help in that area. So that to me is very telling and it aligns perfectly with what you're saying.
Right, good,
So-
good. The other point you made that I just wanted to key off of is that feedback is an opportunity for professional development. And you talked about the new evaluation system, that will be helpful. I'm wondering if there's some thought being given to feedback from the community, specifically the parents and the students. I've always thought that at the end of the school year, I have a lot of opinions about what's been effective, what I've heard from my child, that it could be useful to have shared with the teachers. And my children come home oftentimes with good feedback and good ideas that could be useful to the instructor as well. So I don't know if there's a way to implement something like that where there's feedback given from
I
the
think
user community.
The kids have already been asked feedback. They filled out the 5 essentials last year at the middle school. There's really a parent component also tied in with 5 essentials, that when they actually share the data with us in full form, that we may be able to use. So we'll break that out. We have to be very careful with parent feedback because they're not actually in the classroom with the kids. And we have to be careful how we structure their feedback. We can easily put it on a parent survey where parents share feedback that we can use. I think the other loud thing that we use as educators from parents is if we have a certain amount of either compliments or concerns, those are things we share with teachers and talk about too. So I think you're going to see more and more ways, especially for kids to give feedback on whether they got things or not. And we just have to be careful how we structure parents, because parents have a lot of things to share with us also.
Right.
Do you see any, thinking back about the report card that we received and the relatively low scores in the area of kids with learning needs and the minorities, do you see any correlation between what was exhibited here and those scores? And if you do, how does what you're approaching here begin to solve that problem?
Well, when we talk about improving student achievement scores, and we look at improving student achievement for students with IEPs, one of the biggest pieces that I know to be true, and that there's a significant amount of research to support, is the idea that when kids are in a general education classroom for over 80% of their school day, they are far more likely to meet or exceed state standards. And so that speaks directly to this part here about differentiation strategies, because it can't just be that we change. I mean, we could very easily, over the course of the rest of this year, change IEPs and have everybody in gen ed classes. Without preparing our teachers, it doesn't really solve the problem. We have to help our teachers to be ready and far more prepared to work with a student with learning disability, or work with a student on the autism spectrum, to be able to engage them in their own learning in their classroom. So certainly a lot of, I won't say correlations, but parallels between these two.
And I'm going to use the same example Julie brought up, which I found interesting. One of the things that really stood out to me with the student achievement data is how our exceeds group has continued to go down every year, and how it really should be going up every year. And when you look at the data on the chart that we talked about previously, over 50% of teachers are saying, I need staff development in offering enrichment. I'm not sure what to do with those students. Need enrichment, 54%. So it's highly correlated in the fact that our scores also say the same thing, is that our teachers really need some professional development in offering enrichment to kids.
And differentiation.
In differentiation.
I mean, I think that great teacher are that can teach a spectrum of students, and that is very difficult to do. And I think that the coaching as a form of staff development is probably quite useful, because one may go into a classroom and see one of those teachers that works at 3 or 4 different levels and realize how it works.
Absolutely. And I know that NSSED is working towards a coaching model. We have benefited this year. We have a coach, a behavioral coach, who comes in and works with some of our staff at the elementary school on better classroom management skills, basically, in the classroom. So after they may have been given some feedback from an administrator, or if they're having a particularly challenging time working with a student in the classroom, the behavioral coach is able to come in, do some observations with that teacher and of that student, to sort of say, here's what's working for that child, and here's where we need to make some minor adjustments. And in some cases, here's where we need to completely overhaul that. It is something that a lot of districts are working towards, but as you know, it's a massive shift in philosophy, and with that shift in philosophy comes dollars, because it is a shift from direct intervention with students to supporting teachers in the classroom. And so your FTE may increase with NSSED, even though the number of students have gone down. And so that's something that a lot of districts are struggling with over time.
Interesting.
I thought your report was very well written and easily understandable. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to item 8, where we have action items. We're going to start with A, which is the approval of the personnel report. We have a personnel report which covers the employment of an April McKee at LBMS, who is a long-term sub for 8th grade Spanish, effective November 18th through June of 2014. This also covers early retirement of Liz Zolik at the district office, who's the administrative assistant to the superintendent and the Board of Education, and that is effective June 30th of 2014. May I have a motion to approve the personnel report as presented?
So moved.
Second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Any questions or comments? No? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Charlotte,
Yes.
Gottschall,
Yes.
Haig,
Yes.
Fletchinger, yes. Morosen,
Yes.
Baird.
Yes. Motion's approved. Item B, approval of the tax levy for 2013. And I think we're going to start with Jane's presentation, right?
Well, presentation's a bit of a stretch,
Okay,
but
discussion.
yeah. Just this evening, you are approving the final tax levy for the 2013 levy year. These are taxes that will be extended next spring for the May tax bills, and this is our revenue for the 2014-15 fiscal year. That number for the operating levy is $13.9 million. I'm showing you this little simple line graph, which we've reviewed before, but just as a reminder, our tax extensions, which means the dollars we receive from the county for property taxes, even though for 2012 we intentionally lowered that levy to provide some relief to taxpayers. This year we have to bring the levy back up to cover operating costs, and we're also adding in our debt service payment, which was abated the previous year. Even doing all that, for 2013, our extensions, the dollars we receive, are still below what they were up until 5 years ago. So as you see, we're not seeing below, but 2009 is where we're starting, 10, 11, 12, or might be started at 8. We're still lower than those previous 4 years before 2012. So we're still providing, I think, some good fiscal responsibility and some great relief for taxpayers. Yeah, this number includes the debt service payment. Your 13.9 on your certificate of levy does not include debt service. That's just their operating dollars.
And the total abatement that we did last year was, what was the dollar amount for that?
We were a little over $1 million in the operating levy, I believe. Was it 2? It was just under 1.2 for the debt service payment, which we abated. So those dollars were not extended. And I believe, Mark, actually it was about $2 million in the operating levy.
There's a little over $3 million.
So
Yeah, $2 million in the operating funds, yes. So a total of 3.
About $3 million.
Yes.
So that would explain the dip from 11 some. 11,
Because
12 to.
For 2012, which is the fiscal year we're in,
Yep.
as you recall, we're deficit spending. So we're spending more dollars than we're bringing in intentionally to spend down some of our reserves. In addition to that, we're transferring from the education fund to the debt service fund to make that debt service payment this year, again, using up some of the reserves.
And I'm just asking questions to deliberately help people
Sure.
understand that this is not a random increase this year, and it was a deliberate choice we made last year to bring relief to the community, and we've sharpened our pencils quite a bit this year and asked yourself and the staff to think about budgeting in a slightly different way so that we could approach the levy slightly leaner than we had in the past.
Yes.
Without any lack of services, any cutting or removing of services to the district.
Correct. The board is made a decision to basically levy to cover expenses for next year.
Thus the trend, excluding last year, for the slight decrease in taxes from the previous 5 years, over time. What is, I don't have the motion from you there for this. Is it?
Here, it's right here.
Oh, I never got these. May I have a motion to approve the tax levy? Okay, sorry, let me step back. Is there any further questions or comments from anybody to Jane or Jean? May I have a motion to approve the tax levy for 2013 as presented? I think I need to
Second.
continue reading the rest of this, right?
No, that's it.
You did it.
That's it. You're good.
Okay. So we have John,
So moved.
second. Christine, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Gottschall,
Yes.
Haig,
Yes.
Morosen,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes,
Charlo.
Yes.
the motion is approved. Okay, so we're going to move on to item C, the district and school report cards.
I'm going to have Kevin talk about that briefly. I do want to make a quick comment. I Googled the school code, and it says that after receipt of the school district and school report cards from the state superintendent of education, each school district shall present such report cards at a regular school board meeting, subject to applicable notice, blah, 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 blah. So the bottom line is that next year, we can do this as a presentation and it won't need to be voted on.
Okay.
What about the blah, 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 blah part?
Posting it on the internet website. Would you like me to read the whole thing?
14-day notice, blah, 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 blah.
So, I'd be happy, John, if you want to stay after the meeting, I'd be happy to read that to you.
So we have reviewed the school district report card several times at this point, and so I would ask that you approve them this evening as required by law.
Okay.
May I have a motion to approve the district report cards as presented?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Christine, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Haig,
Yes.
Letchinger, yes. Morosen,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Charlo,
Yes.
Gottschall.
Yes.
Motion's approved. Item D, second reading approval of the harassment policy 7:2. We have 7.20. We have in our packets a harassment policy that we've seen several times. May I have a motion to approve the second reading as provided in your packet?
So moved.
Second.
Any of you guys want to have discussion or questions or comments or concerns about that harassment policy?
Sorry.
Although I'm being discouraged by my neighbor here, I continue to I think we should approve this policy, so it's not that. But I am concerned that I have not yet seen, and I think anything about adult to student standards. And it's not, what constitutes sexual harassment in particular from student to student is going to be very different than the standards you would expect from adult to student. So I think this is a fine harassment policy. I would recommend that we go ahead and vote it in. But at some point, I don't want to be lost, that there ought to be somewhere that it says,
We have a section 5 policy on that,
Okay.
which we can bring.
yeah, I'd still like to see that and see how these two go together. Right.
Okay, so we'll make a note to make
So
sure
we
we
need to bring
revisit
that.
that section in the future. Any other questions or concerns or comments about this policy? So we need,
Yeah, first and a second.
we had first and second. Can we have a roll call vote to approve the second reading?
Letchinger, yes. Morosen,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Charlo,
Yes.
Gotcho,
Yes.
Haig.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Similarly, under action items E, we need a motion to approve the second reading of the bullying policy 7:1.80.
After you have the motion, I have a question.
So moved by Christine, and second?
By June.
No,
Oh,
Ju-
Julie?
Gotcho.
Okay,
I'll second.
Okay,
on
and discussion.
page 3 of 4, it says to consider adding. I could not remember if we wanted that added or not.
I think,
I think we did.
why wouldn't we?
So we're approving it, just, we need to take out the words to consider adding them. Okay. I just wanted to verify that before putting the second reading stamp on it.
I had a question, and maybe it's not a big deal, but it's in that consider adding paragraph, it talks about students who engage in acts of aggressive behavior, students are victims of aggressive behavior, put them at risk for aggressive behavior. How come we're not using the word bullying or aggressive behavior there? Sounds like a deliberate lawyer choice, but.
And
if
we
use
have
bullying
3
as a
attorneys working on
to
it.
eliminate,
Okay. If the attorney said
We have
aggressive behavior,
3
there had to be
attorneys
some
working on
reason.
that.
probably too narrow. If you put bullying in there, it's probably too narrow. All right, just want to raise it. Okay, may I have a roll call vote for approval of the second reading of the bullying policy 7:1?
Morosen,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Charlo,
Yes.
Gotcho,
Yes.
Haig.
Yes.
Motion approved. All right, we need a motion for approval of the first reading of our new fund balance policy. Just the first reading.
So moved.
Second, anybody?
Second.
Discussion, please.
I'd like to
I
raise
got
a
a bunch
couple
of comments too.
couple of comments I have. One of the things that concerns me that hasn't been included is a requirement that once it's anticipated, because the reserve shouldn't be a surprise, the fund balance shouldn't be a surprise to any of us. We forecasted out for 5 years. We know where the reserve roughly is going to be 5 years from now, setting aside any unforeseen circumstances. So it's not going to be a surprise. And I think that knowing a year in advance, or maybe even 2 years in advance, that we're going to go above or below, there should be some sort of plan of action to document how the fund balance will be brought back in line. Let me give you a little example. Right now, we were almost 90% last year, or almost close to 100%. And even with the withdrawal of the monies for the bond restructuring and the deficit offset, we're going to be over 60% next year. So we're already violating the policy we're putting in place. And by the end of the 5-year period, we're going to be at 92%. So we're going to be back where we were when we started this discussion. And I think we need to put something in here that requires, not necessarily this board, but future boards to address that before it goes so far out of range that it becomes impossible to address. Now I know we've discussed the fact that we have some requirements potentially at the middle school. The unforeseen circumstances, I think, in total, worst case was like $2.5 million.
Right.
So, we're talking about millions of dollars. And the way I'm just going to make a suggestion, I'd be willing to rework this, is something along the lines, as an example, that next year, for example, we're going to be 11 percentage points above the maximum of 50. It's forecasted to be 61. That's $1.5 million. I think that a plan of action would be to decide that we're going to use those funds in some specific fashion, or we give those funds back to the taxpayer.
So is
Right,
that
or
what-
justify how we're going to use the funds so the
Right.
balance is going to go down back to 50
Right.
within 2 years or
Right.
3 years.
Is that what the last paragraph, so you want it more detailed than what the last paragraph
The last
says?
paragraph tries to do that.
It tries, but it's not specific enough in my.
Okay, that's what,
I took a shot at it. I can. That's
Yeah, the thing is,
focused
if it wanders up to 60, okay, but then it wanders up to 70, 80, and before you know it, you're back up to 90, and we're gonna have taxpayers down our throats. And I think I'd like to anticipate that, and there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to anticipate that and address that. in this policy. So,
No, I agree.
I reworded that last sentence. You can tell me if you think it's worth as a merit. In the event the aggregate fund balance approaches the limits of the targeted range, the board will direct the superintendent to prepare recommendations for options for corrective action. It's asking for a plan to bring it back within the range.
and when will she do, or he or she do that?
We could add.
Because it should be,
At
for
time.
example, that, is it tomorrow? Because we just approved the budget for next year, we're gonna be at 61%. So what's the trigger, what's the time frame for exercising that option? And how do we announce it? Is it announced at a board meeting? Is it, you know?
It's gotta be at one of the two, because it says you're gonna review it at least twice a year. Where does it say that in there?
It is in
In the
the
paragraph right above. The second.
paragraph
Yeah, the paragraph
next
right
to
above.
last.
So I would see that when you're doing the review, that's where you would give the direction.
Okay. So when's the next review?
Well, that
What's
would,
that timed, actually?
that's gonna be on your board calendars that we're bringing in January. Mark and I just met on that today.
Because we're gonna need some action. We're gonna be up, we're gonna be $1.5 million over where we need to be, over the maximum that we're gonna establish, so just to warn you, and that's probably gonna happen every single year. If we continue to see the fund balances and we don't utilize those funds for other purposes.
Well, we also have to reconcile if we're gonna do two evaluations of fund balance, but we only look at the fund balance as of the end of the year, which is June 30th. We need to reconcile. Those are two different things right there. Because it says
They're
here,
monitoring it twice
says
a
the
year.
board shall seek to maintain an aggregate year-end fund balance of no less than that. That gets into the range. And if that's the date we're measuring it, we should probably put in what that date is. But also, we talk about reading it twice a year. And is it really based on the end of the year or those interim
Yeah, because in the
evaluations?
middle of the year, we're sitting on
Yeah.
$25 million. It probably should be, what do you think, Jane, the end of the year?
Well, you're going to have to work, if you're in the middle of the year, if we review in January and for some reason we're going to exceed the 50%, we didn't anticipate it. You can't do anything to affect that fiscal year, so you're going to be talking about what you can do the following fiscal year or the following 2 fiscal years. I mean, the only way you could do it in the middle of the fiscal year is amend your budget and spend more money. I don't think that's your intent. You don't want to spend money just to spend it to meet a fund balance. So you're going to always be planning at least 1 year ahead if you're going to be looking at exceeding or being lower than your
What's the
range.
decision, for example, to abate? When would that be? If, let's say we're over and we decide. as a
Levy
board,
time.
Levy till
Yeah,
the
fall.
like
Levy
fall.
time.
So
The
why,
fall.
why can't we revisit this prior to that decision?
In the summer, at
With
the
the
end of the
budget.
fiscal year, you're going to know what your fund balance is. You haven't really finalized the next year's budget yet, and you certainly then are going to look at the levy for the following fiscal year. Summertime is when you really can be the most effective, I guess, in making decisions on immediate
That's what I would say.
Yeah, I would say
budget or longer term,
I
2
think we
years
only need
out.
to do it once a year. I don't see any reason to do it twice a year, and we do it at a point in time when we can make some,
See what needs to be done.
Spring, beginning of the summer.
Right
Yes.
in alignment with the budget.
Yes, that's exactly right, because we're going to know in the spring pretty much where our fund balance is
Okay.
going to.
So let's say
I
this
mean, we
comes-
should know in the fall, but you're really going to know with things that happen during the year where you're going to be.
And by then, for this year, we should have information on the needs of the BLLD expressed and the studies that you're doing as part of the strategic
Mhm.
plan, so.
Our
that's a good plan.
facilities committee's
Yeah,
meeting twice
okay.
in January.
So the spring?
Yeah,
Okay.
That's when I would-
I could buy that. I could buy it once a year. I wouldn't need to see it done twice a year.
Do we have any concern, and this is a question that is gonna come back to the way we do accounting, for blips in our fund balance where it dips temporarily below a range within a fiscal year? Is that a possibility?
Unless something major happens and it's an unknown,
That's-
you're going to know.
Because if we're
You're
hovering
going
in
to
the
know.
30% range and still within our range, and
unless there's a crisis.
Yeah,
that
you're
won't
gonna know. It would have to be a surprise to everyone. You're gonna know what's.
okay.
It's predictable enough a year ahead of time, like if we look at
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, because it's a very stable budget, and it's a very stable
Tax base.
inflow and outflow. So you could actually do it like the accounting and treasury report, and you could have something from, the business manager saying, oh, by the way, for information's sake, the balance is at blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah again. Blah, blah, blah is a very important concept financially.
A couple other thoughts I had here. In the first paragraph, we say the Board of Education shall be fiscally responsible. That's awfully vague. Do we need to define that? And attempt to stabilize property taxes, do we need to define that? In the second paragraph, the superintendent or designee shall maintain fund balances adequate to ensure. Do we need to say fund balances in each fund, or are we talking about aggregate?
I thought we went through all these with Terry.
Well, I can tell you, right, Mark, that language is picked up directly out of the state of Illinois.
I know. I saw this. I saw the same fund balance wording in the. That doesn't that's kind of your baseline minimum requirement, right? But-
And I also think that you cannot define fiscal responsibility.
Yeah,
Because that's in the eye of the beholder.
That's the
Again,
scary thing.
Well, yeah, but
Right.
but I also think that this is a
It's a
policy,
guiding principle.
and it's a guiding principle.
Okay.
So you
So I wanted to
cannot,
raise it.
And we want to
Will
leave it a little
subsequent boards
open-ended.
interpret that differently? That's a little bit of a concern.
Well, the
Well,
bottom line is if a future board, or this board for that matter, didn't want to do some of this stuff, then just change the policy.
right,
Okay.
change the
So
policy,
I
yes.
think, the intent is here, we set the course and, no choice but to let go of it.
My last comment was, and there's a sentence that I hear come up constantly, and I thought we should add it, that our fund balances, changes in fund balances should never be a surprise to us. I thought we should add that in that second last of the paragraph, where it starts off budgeting and fund balance and levy, all that. That maybe the lead-in should be fund balance changes should never come as a surprise, and then we get into what we're gonna do.
Well, but I understand what you're saying, but I think that good sound management, good fiscal management means that you don't get surprised. If we are
So
doing
why
our
must it be
job,
obvious?
well,
Because
because,
apparently it wasn't obvious historically.
yeah, but just because.
But you should know what's going to happen when you're
Right.
predicting your
But
budget
that
and
takes
looking over
bad
time.
law.
But But part of the reason you have a reserve is to be in a position to take care of things that are unforeseen. And that would give you kind of a sudden change in your balance.
Jane, you were gonna say something too, I think.
I don't believe previous boards were surprised by anything. They intentionally were trying to grow the fund balance because they were starting from a deficit. So it was very intentional. There was great discussion amongst, at the time, finance committee that we had about how to set those levies, knowing that we were growing the fund balance.
The problem, we can get in a long argument about
But I just want to,
that.
She's just telling you,
Right, I understand. what
time-wise,
you're
that
saying,
was
right.
the
if
philosophy.
you agree with it or not, that's just how.
Right, okay.
Mark, if you're done, I have a couple of
Go,
my own.
Yep.
In the third paragraph, the board shall seek to maintain an aggregate year-end fund balance. I don't think we mean of no less than the range. I think we mean in the range.
Right.
So I would strike of no less than, replace that with the word in.
Okay, hold on. Got it,
Or within.
Or within.
got it.
The next paragraph down, it just seems like an incomplete sentence or thought to me. I would add at the end, when we should discuss drawing upon its reserves or borrowing money to maintain a fund balance in range. And then I agree that the superintendent, we inform the board whenever it should discuss drawing upon reserves or borrowing money to maintain the fund balance in
Well, we
range.
give a-
That's
we
the
give a
point of
I
it.
would borrow money to maintain
Run
the
for
reserve.
specific purposes.
I don't like. I
don't like
think
that
no.
idea.
I think it's.
Let's strike that.
Yeah, I would not do the borrowing. I think it's silly to borrow to maintain a reserve. I think that's a function of the levy.
Right.
So I
Okay,
would scratch
strike.
off the borrowing money.
It
Okay.
could be, you could even make it more general.
That's taken
Implement
right out of
remedial
it.
procedures or something.
Right, but I
That's
just
it.
assume.
Okay,
Right,
I like that
exactly.
better.
Yeah, that's
That's fine.
cut and paste type.
Which one do you like better?
I've got it.
Oh, implementing remedial procedures.
Right, right, whatever those may be. Maybe
Because
if
it
we
might
dip
be-
too low, it might be to bring it
All
up.
right, you're talking about a different, I need to get it down, so
No,
where are you?
Yeah, same thing.
It should discuss drawing upon its reserves or implementing remedial procedures.
To
Okay.
maintain a fund balance in range.
Or your action, let's call it action, action to maintain the fund balance to the proper range. or to
That way it's not-
replenish because you're assuming a negative, right?
That's why, that way the remedy is not limited to just drawing on reserves. Maybe there's something else we can do.
Okay. I want to applaud you because this is the most detailed fund balance policy I've looked at out of any of them.
And it's still
We're not
going.
done yet.
Yeah, right.
We're not done yet.
Still going.
But I will tell you, I think that you've made great progress.
I think we should sell it on the internet to raise some money.
I'll tell you,
We need a copyright.
in my president's forums at the III conference, it came up that several districts are looking at this and that we are having our first draft presented. I've had 3 different people from that conference email me and say, "Can I see your first draft?"
And I've had 2, so that's 5.
That's scary.
I have a question. Why does it say operational services at the top under fund balances? Shouldn't it just be fund balances there?
I have no idea why it says that.
It could be cut and paste from
Yeah.
another form. I don't know if you noticed that the NSSED version of their new fund balance policy has a Hodges did theirs too, because it's a lot of the same language in theirs.
Yeah, I didn't notice that.
I just like to say I'm still not satisfied with the range. I think it should be 40 to 50%. I think 30 puts us within less than $1 million of the low point we want to be at, the 25%. You know, you call it the unforeseen because you can't foresee it, and I think that it's reasonable to say that there could be something like that could happen that we would want to be in a position to cover.
I'd just like to know what that might be. I haven't heard anything.
I think that we can have this debate for a long time. I think that let's work with this. As you said earlier, it's not set in stone. Depending on what is happening, we can always change that range. Either up it or make it lower. I mean, I've seen a lot of circumstances where reserve in percentage increased, also based on economic circumstances. So I think that, you know, this is really a very fat reserve.
I think it's particularly
and
fat,
so,
Christine.
you know, I'm okay with it if, you know, in 2 years we see that it's not satisfactory, then let's by all means revise the policy.
Didn't we think that historically the variability was somewhere around $2.5 million is what the variance has been?
Worst case.
So we've got, you know, $20 million to cover what has historically been a max of $2.5 million variable.
We're never gonna all agree on this, but it's been a conversation we've had over several meetings where we have people who think it's too narrow or too low, and there are people who think it's too fat. And I think this is where we keep coming back to as a compromise, and we can keep entertaining it, but we seem to keep coming back to this as a compromise.
2.5, John, was what percentage? I cannot recall.
I'm sorry?
$2.5 million.
Well, no, we asked Jane to look at what the worst case might be in the upcoming.
Right, that's the
Funds.
worst case, right?
2.5
2.5
million,
million. And in percentage, what does that represent?
Oh, 2.5 divided by 16, so what, 5%? Oh, wait a minute.
No, it's more like,
No,
Yeah,
it's
it's
about
5%.
17%.
Yeah. Anyway, one other thing I just want to say, Leanne, at 30%, which would be our lowest, and we should know that that's going to occur at least a year or 2 in advance, we would still have $4.5 million at the bottom. And if we anticipate a year before that we're going to hit that, we should take action to not get there. My concern is at the top end, we're holding on to 8 or 9 million, which is, I think, pretty lucrative, a pretty high number, given that we haven't really defined how we're going to use it yet. So I think for this year, we're safe. I'm willing to revisit it, but I think for this year, this is safe.
Well, like we said, nothing's set in stone.
Right.
Maybe
Well,
as
when you
we
look
move-
at, excuse me for interrupting you. When you're talking about the worst case scenario that's possible of being $2.5 million, if that were to occur, it would take our reserve fund down below the 25% mark.
If we were at 30%, which we should never
Right.
get to.
Oh, you don't think we'll get to 30%?
We shouldn't. Why, I mean,
Well,
we're-
because it says
we're-
30 to 50, so
yeah,
that's
but
why I'm saying.
But we're projecting right now the next 5 years.
I understand what we're projecting.
Okay.
I understand.
Okay, so next year at 60, we're gonna have 10 million. So to get down to 30%, which would be roughly 4 million, we'd have to spend $6 million in 1 year.
Well, and maybe we can do more of what we did this year to deal with that.
Right, that's my point.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. I'm not pushing for us to have, above and beyond the 50 or, my concern is that at the lower end, we don't want to go below that 25% mark because below 25% is where we start running into problems with state rating, possibility of the bond rating changing. And so to me, if you're at 30% and you have less than $1 million over that 25%, it's pretty close. And understanding that we don't really have that much flexibility in how much we're going to levy. At some point, I mean, you run into, you can only increase it by CPI or 3% or whatever. To me, it seems like 30% is too low.
Yeah, but in order to get there, you'd have to spend $6 million in 1 year.
Right.
And if we do our jobs and we
That's right.
keep an eye
But
on
that's something that
the
we're planning to
trend.
correct.
I mean, I think what Leanne is saying is that we are stating here that 30 is an acceptable number, 30%. So you say we may never get there, but we could and may drive to do it because we've said that's okay. So,
If we're saying 30% is the range, I assume that's where we're headed.
if your argument is, but we will never get there, then why not? So we shouldn't worry. Why not just change the number? Which I'm not advocating, but I do understand the point.
The other side of this argument is that to build that reserve on which we get absolutely no interest, of minimal interest, you're actually levying money. So the interesting question is, if you were to say to me, Chris, I'm going to invest this in short term and I'm going to make 4%. Yes, I would consider a higher reserve because I think there's some benefits there in interest, but we're getting nothing out of this. So you're taking the money from the levy. I mean, you're levying that money to put in a basically a financial instrument that gives you just about nothing, and I think that is problematic. You know what I'm saying? So. I think that we should not get hung up on this. As we get a better sense of what's going to happen and we do the protection, then we can always revisit this. But I think that for the moment, if there is a problem, it's certainly not on the low hand.
It's on the high end.
It's on the high hand.
Absolutely.
And that do we have enough of a time horizon to correct this? Should it go below? Or even come near the 30%, then we can address it over 5 years with the levy. And I'm really comfortable with this. And the other thing that you have to consider is that our revenue, our funding is pretty stable. It's not like you're going to lose a dramatic amount of funding. I mean, the property value, this is the North Shore. Yes, it's gone down, but it maintains itself. So the risk of losing funding is not that great, which is one of the impetus for a reserve in the first place.
Let me ask this question. I'll ask it specifically of John because I know you've spent a lot of time looking at this. Would you be comfortable if this district were sort of perpetually around 30%? Because if you wouldn't be comfortable there, I think we should increase the number. But if you, having dug very deeply into these numbers, for which the board is deeply grateful, if you're comfortable there, then I think 30 is a good number.
Yeah,
Okay.
Because up until 2001, the reserve was $500,000, right? That's why they ran into trouble. We've gone through this discussion once before. The reserve was $500,000.
And then all of a sudden it was a minus almost $2 million.
Right. So at $5 million, which is where we are, 30% of 16 million is roughly $5 million. I'm very comfortable.
Yeah.
I think we're going to be, Christine's absolutely right. I guarantee you I'll only be on this board for 4 years, but the next 4 years we're going to be talking about how we're going to get back under 50.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
So I will bring this back with some changes and we'll see where we go for second reading.
So let's just get a quick vote to approve the first reading.
Okay, Barry,
Yes.
Charlo,
No.
Gottschall,
Yes.
Peg,
Yes?
Letchinger, yes. Morosi,
Yes.
The motion's approved. Okay, we're going to move to the consent agenda. Every month, The board can choose to place items that are reoccurring, such as the approval of previous minutes, annual responsibilities such as the appointment of a school treasurer for the next year, or items of a regulatory nature that must by law be approved by the board. These items can be combined into one motion and passed together as part of a consent agenda. The board regularly screens its consent agenda each month and removes motions from it that, in the board's judgment, might otherwise require discussion or public comment. Before we begin, does anybody want to remove any of these items from the consent agenda?
No.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve the following items on the consent agenda?
So move.
No, I think I need to read them first. Number 1, Committee of the Whole meeting minutes, November 5th, 2013. Number 2, Closed session meeting minutes, November 5th, 2013. Regular meeting minutes, November 12th, 2013. Closed session meeting minutes, November 12th, 2013. Destruction of closed session tapes for June 12th, 2012. Approval of the P-card report. Approval of the bills payable. Approval of the treasurer's report. And approval of the activities report. So moved. Christine?
Second by Charlotte.
Hello. And may we have a roll call vote, please?
Charlotte.
Yes.
Gottschalk.
Yes.
Hay.
Yes.
Letchinger. Yes. Rosen.
Yes.
Barrett.
Yes. Motion's approved. That is it for our action items. Do we have anything under information? Jean?
I just wanted to tell all of you and our community that in the next couple of weeks we'll all be celebrating our different holidays, and I'm hoping that everybody has time to celebrate some time with their family and create wonderful warm memories and get some rest and enjoy the freezing weather when I'm in warm weather. So happy holidays, everybody.
You have to dig that in a little bit. And then finally, we're going to, under item 10, open the floor up for public comment. So if anybody would like to address the board, please do so. And if nobody would like to do that today, I would propose the motion that we adjourn at 8:32.
So moved.
Second.
Second for adjournment. Roll call. All in favor of adjournment?
Yes.
Opposed? Nobody. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Jay?